After the Reformation, at the time of the Reformation, as we remember, hopefully we remember that the Reformation was not a monolithic movement. It began very unified. And again, the principal doctrine stemming from the Reformation is sola fide, justification by faith alone, and we all know the solas. However, after the Reformation, there was a dispute. We discussed this actually months ago, and so for anyone who's listening or watching, months ago, I don't remember exactly how long ago, but we did a series specifically regarding Roman Catholicism, and so if you're interested in this debate, in this dispute, that would be in the message regarding the Eucharist, and also we had a message following that, subsequent to that, regarding the Lord's Supper. We might have gotten into it then too, but definitely the Roman Catholic message. But during this dispute, I don't want to go into all the details about the specifics about why this came about, but ultimately it had to do with the nature of the Lord's Supper and the presence of Christ at the communion table. And John Calvin came up with a Latin expression I love. It's finitum non capax infinitum. The finite cannot contain or comprehend or grasp the infinite. The finite cannot fully comprehend the infinite. And I just think that's a good phrase to illustrate what we're doing here. Again, regarding God's answer to Job, much of this is going to be left a mystery, and I pray to God we can at least get mostly through the chapter of 30, the 38th chapter, except for the last verse, which I don't think really should have belonged into the 38th chapter. Now, in addition to this, we also made the point that this is God the Father coming to his servant and his son, Job. In Proverbs chapter 4, verse 1 says, "Hear, my children, the instruction of a father, and give attention to know understanding." Now, in addition to this, we remember when Job was crying out to God in his first prayer, and he essentially says, "What is man? You are mindful of him, or you follow him at every moment, you watcher of men," and so forth. Well, I think David taking off from this in the eighth Psalm, verses 3 through 5, he says, "When I consider your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars which you have ordained, what is man that you are mindful of him, and the son of man that you visit him? For you have made him a little lower than the angels, and you have crowned him with glory and honor." So David is the one who points to the heavens and the work of God's fingers and so on, in order, before he asks the profound question, "What is man that you are mindful of him, or the son of man that you visit him?" I consider the heavens and the work of your hands, and by this I am awed. I find your creation awesome. I find the heavens, and I find your earth, which is exactly what goes into this 38th chapter. So as we actually go through this chapter, let us remember what God is doing here. He's showing Job the beauty of his creation, the splendor and the majesty and the mysteries that underlie. There's only so much we can know about this. Even now, in our great scientific age, we are limited. We know more about space than we do about the oceans and so on. So I thought this would be a fitting way to get into the chapter finally, and at last actually consider what God has to say to his son, Job. And where we're going to pick up is actually where we left off last week, beginning in verse 12. Verse 12 says, "Have you commanded the morning since your days began, and caused the dawn to know its place, that it may take hold of the ends of the earth, and the wicked be shaken out of it? It takes on form like clay under a seal, and stands out like a garment. From the wicked their light is withheld, and the upraised arm is broken." Now, so remember, this is 1 colon. This is what they're called So remember, when these are divided, when you have a space between them, they're one strophe or one colon. This is one colon as a part of an entire strophe, okay? But it begins, have you commanded the morning since your days began? As God does. So as we alluded to last week, the amazing beauty of the sunrise and the sunset, and this is exactly what he's getting into, the beauty of it, God commands. This is all done by the command of God. The earth spins, we know how this actually takes place, and it rotates around the sun. What holds the earth up? We understand these gravitational forces and so forth, space and so on, but we don't know everything. We don't know how, we don't know why, we don't know exactly why the timing is so perfect as well. And he'll get into the constellations as well, kind of pointing to the seasons, and we've measured seasons by the constellations and so on. So, have you commanded the morning since your days began? Such as I have, I do it every day. I commanded it in creation, and now I sustain it, commanding it to come every day. The morning comes every day by my command. And cause the dawn to know its place. Let's remember that. He's talking about the dawn. The morning is having like a dwelling place. Do you know this? Have you commanded the morning since your days began and caused the dawn to know its place, that it might take hold of the ends of the earth and the wicked be shaken out of it? Now, this is really a picture of the wicked being threshed out. So that it might take hold of the ends of the earth, the dawn. Okay, so this goes to the ends of the earth. It kind of rolls along around the whole earth, which we'll get to. Let's go to the next verse. It takes on form like clay under a seal and stands out like a garment. Now, we've talked about the signet ring and the seal, but it's been found actually in archaeology in Babylon. They had this cylinder seal. And the cylinder seal is you would put the wax, the hot wax, on whatever document to close it by the seal, and you would roll it. The cylinder seal, you rolled it, and that would imprint whatever your seal was onto the wax. And so essentially, God is painting this picture of a cylinder seal going across the whole earth and showing forth the wonders and the beauty of creation. And just like this cylinder seal forms the wax, so the dawn reveals the different hills and valleys and all sorts of different topographies, all sorts of different trees and scenes, all unfolding by this rolling dawn that stretches across the whole globe. It's a beautiful scene. However, because of this, the wicked are shaken out of it because they hate the light. They prefer the darkness rather than the light. So, going on to verse 15, from the wicked their light is withheld because they hate the light, and the upraised arm is broken. I want to give some citations actually found in Job, from Job himself, to get into more of the heart of the issue here. So back in Job chapter 24, verse 13 says, there are those who rebel against the light. They do not know its ways, nor abide in its path. Verses 15 through 17 says, the eye of the adulterer waits for the twilight, saying, no eye will see me. And he disguises his face. In the dark they break into houses, where they marked for themselves in the daytime. They do not know the light, for the morning is the same to them as the shadow of death. If someone recognizes them, they are in the terrors of the shadow of death. So the wicked's light is the darkness, and we will see that. So we needed to set this up now. But the wicked, first of all, are shaken out of it. Again, this is just like the threshing floor, where you divide the wheat and the chaff, just like John the Baptist was illustrating to the people. He has his winnowing fan in his hand. He is about to thresh this floor, and this is exactly what takes place. So the beauty of creation, the beauty and the splendor of creation, and the stars and the heavens and so forth, these are all good. God loves it. God calls it good. He says this is good. However, from these, he will also judge the earth. As we go into the hail and saving it, reserving it for the time of trouble. We will get into that. So these are beautiful creations meant to glorify God. So is his judgment. So is his wrath meant to glorify him. Now, verses 16 through 18. Have you entered the springs of the sea? Or have you walked in search of the depths? Have the gates of death been revealed to you? Or have you seen the doors of the shadow of death? Have you comprehended the breadth of the earth? Tell me if you know all this. Now, so again, another strophe. And so what we want to do is so this is how we read it, okay? We see the first verse, but then we need to take the other verses to put the context into the first verse. So it begins, have you entered the springs of the sea? Or have you walked in search of the depths? Now, what this really alludes to are those fountains that sprung up during the flood. Remember, the flood wasn't merely caused by rain. It was also the fountains of the seas burst forth and filled the earth. So these are, I think this is again going back into judgment. Many people see all of what God says as having nothing to do with morality. I think it's all too clear that he is absolutely talking specifically of the wicked here. And so he's really pointing back to the flood here, in my interpretation anyway. I think he's pointing back to the flood, because what follows this, have you entered the springs of the sea? Again, these fountains. Have the gates of death been revealed to you? How do you make sense of that without pointing to judgment and wickedness and morality? Have you seen, have the gates of death? Now these are the gates though. This is the entrance. Have you even seen the entrance into the death? Do you even know what that is? Much less death itself. Job also had said, no one knows the place of death. Sheol. No one knows this, but God does. And God knows his place. And so God's asking him, have even the gates of death been revealed to you? How much of this can you understand? The only way, again, we don't know about much of the under the waters, under the ocean, the floor of the ocean. We know very little. And essentially he's asking Job, have you walked these? Have you plunged the depths of the sea, much less understanding, Job? You couldn't even do this if you wanted to. The gates of death couldn't be revealed to you no matter how much you sought down on the ocean floor and so forth. So you asked a lot of questions, but you can only know so much. Have the gates of death been revealed to you? Have you seen the doors? Again, this is the entrance into the shadow of death. Again, this is like the glimpse of glimpses. Have you even come across the beginning portions of this? Do you know anything about this at all? Have you comprehended the breadth of the earth? Have you comprehended the breadth of the earth, the grand scale, and all that is included with this? Tell me if you know all this. I see this as kind of like the Selah in the Psalms, where, they're singing, they're praising, or they're considering something, and then Selah, pause. Take a moment to consider this. Take a moment to take all this in. Tell me if you know all this, Job. Again, this is not sarcastic. God is being gentle with him. Tell me if you know all this, Job. Have the gates of death even been revealed to you? Or the doors of the shadow of death? Here it is, where we were getting into the place. Where's the way to the dwelling of light and darkness? Where is his place? Now here, if you read in the Hebrew, the dwelling is really a house, is really a place to be inhabited. Place, it's actually it's translated twice, whithersoever, in the King James anyway. Twice it just means whithersoever. It's some nondescript place. So light has a home, darkness has some undescribed place. But he asks, where's the way? Where's the way to the abode of light? Where's the way, Job? You know where the way is. He is the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. So, where's the way to the dwelling of light? And darkness, where is its place, Job? But he talks about these as having, again, some sort of a location from whence they emanate, from whence they come. Where does light come from? From God's voice. Let there be light, and there was light. He is the dwelling place of light. From him comes all of these, that you may take it to its territory, right? Do you know the dwelling of light? Do you know the place of darkness? That you may take it to its territory, that you may know the paths to its home? Do you know it because you were born then, or because the number of your days is great? Do you know this because you are omniscient? Do you know this because you were there when I spoke, let there be light, and there was light, and I said that it was good? I blessed the light. Were you there? Do you know it because you were born then? Job, you know you weren't born then. We are limited. We must move on. 22 through 24. I love this. Have you entered the treasury of snow, or have you seen the treasury of hail, which I reserve for the time of trouble, for the day of battle and war? By what way is light diffused? Really divided, or the east wind scattered over the earth? Have you entered the sea? Now, in Texas, we got to use our imagination here a little bit. I mean, it snowed a couple times in the past few years, but outside of that, we have to go to Colorado on occasion to see this beautiful, beautiful splendor, this beautiful array of snow. A snowflake. Think about it as something just a snowflake. They say there's no one snowflake alike like another. There's something unique about snow, but he talks about it as a treasury, as a storehouse, as it were, as a bank, if you want to put it like that, but as a treasury. He loves the snow and he loves the hail. However, it's really kind of an armory of sorts, because which I have reserved for the time of trouble, for the day of battle and war. Now, there are many different accounts. However, one of the easiest ones to remember, if we can remember, is that during the plagues on Egypt. And it was really after the hail, just before the death of the firstborn, where Pharaoh seemingly actually repented. It was from the hail. But there are other times, and in Revelation, it promises that this is the way he is going to judge the earth. It's by fire and by hail. If we can remember the episode in Sodom and Gomorrah, hellfire and sulfur, fire and hail. And he will judge the earth likewise. But this is what he's saying. Snow and hail are a treasury to me. However, I also store them up for the day of trouble, for the day of judgment. This beauty, this beautiful white stuff that we use for recreation. We ski on it and so forth. I've tried the snowboarding, not good at it, but I've tried it. And other things of the like. These are meant for our enjoyment, but by these he will also judge the world. By what way is light divided? Because again, within the light-giving apparatus in the heavens and so forth, who gives the sun its light? Why does this... the sun, I think it's like 90 million miles away, and it takes 8 minutes for the light to get here. That's amazing. That's amazing. But where does the light come from in the sun? The sun doesn't intrinsically, it's not a being in and of itself. It doesn't have the power to emanate light or not emanate light. It's not like willing to shed light on the earth or anything. It's by the hand of God these things are. Okay, 25 through 30. Who has divided a channel for the overflowing water, or a path for the thunderbolt? So these channels are essentially, we notice it doesn't just rain in one place in the world whenever it rains, right? It rains at all sorts of different places. So where are these channels, Job? Tell me, why does it rain here and over here different times at different places and for different reasons, or a path for the thunderbolt. Again, there's a way to these things. To cause it to rain on a land where there is no one, a wilderness in which there is no man, to satisfy the desolate waste and cause to spring forth the growth of tender grass. So even the desolate lands, God reigns on the just and on the unjust. However, he reigns on the desolate places where no one lives for his own glory, for his own glory. And this starts to sprout up grass. A beautiful picture that only God's eye sees. God, why, Job? Why, Job? Why does it rain everywhere, including these places where no man dwells? Has the rain a father? Or who has begotten the drops of the dew? Rain is, let's continue. From whose womb comes the ice and the frost of heaven? Who gives it birth? The waters harden like stone, and the surface of the deep is frozen. So we'll get more to the rain and the clouds and so forth, because it's more of another picture of a storehouse. But how do all these different elements come from all over the globe and then find their way into some cloud which makes rain? How are these things done? We don't know these things. We are still very limited as to how much we know, but we must move on. 31 through 33. Can you bind the cluster of the Pleiades or loose the belt of Orion? This is where I wanted to spend a lot of time, and we don't have time. So the Pleiades are the 7 stars. It's kind of, in the Hebrew, it's either a band or a knot. And if you look at this constellation, it kind of looks like a knot. I think that's a good illustration of it. But these are the 7 daughters of the Titan, in Greek mythology, of the Titan Atlas. And that doesn't matter. Ultimately, in Hebraic terms, this is a knot. Can you bind the cluster, the knot of the Pleiades? Can you bring these together? Or loose the belt of Orion. Now, again, Orion is the Greek name for this hunter. He was a giant hunter, supposedly. In the Hebrew, it's actually Nimrod. If we remember, after the flood, he was the one who became a great hunter, wicked man. He was in the place of Shinar, where the Tower of Babel was. So he might have been the instigator of all that. So essentially, in the Hebrew, this word is actually the fool. He's the fool. It's Nimrod. But as we know about this figure, the easiest thing to see, the thing that's usually most visible, is his belt, Orion's belt. That's where Orion's belt comes from. So he's just saying, so can you bind the knot of the Pleiades, and can you loose the belt of Orion? So 2 different ways of looking at this, but can you put these things together, or can you take them apart? Can you do anything to them? Can you bring out Mazzaroth in its season? This is essentially all the motions of all the constellations. So there's more to that, but this is essentially just talking about all the different constellations. Or can you guide the great bear with his cubs? This is Arcturus. And he, sometimes they're not always easy to see, but the bear, you can kind of see. But if on a very clear night, or out in the country where you're able to see the stars more, then you will see kind of a pattern after this bear, and he's calling them, the bear's cubs. I just think that's a cool picture. So can you even guide the great bear? Again, these are the great heavens that I have made. I can bind. So all of these questions, God's asking Job. He's essentially saying, have you commanded the morning since your days began? I have, and caused the dawn to know its place, that it might take. So have you entered the springs of the sea, or have you walked in search of the depths? I have. Where is the way to the dwelling of light and darkness? Where is this place? I know. Have you entered the treasury of the snow? Have you seen the treasury of hail, which I have reserved for the time of trouble? So I have. Who has divided a channel for the overflowing water? I have. Can you bind the cluster of the Pleiades? I can. Can you loose the belt of Orion? I can. Can you bring out Mazzaroth in its season? I can. Or can you guide the great bear with its cubs? I can. can you, do you, where were you, so forth. I know these things. Do you know the ordinances of the heavens? Again, this is the order of the constellations, where for all of time we have read the stars to know our seasons and so forth. Can you set their dominions over the earth? 34 through 38, and this is where we will conclude, because it goes into the animate creatures after this, and so we're going to conclude with, I think, these last verses belong in the following chapter, and so that's how we're going to do it. Can you lift up your voice to the clouds, that an abundance of water may cover you? Can you command the rain to come? Do we have control? We're trying to develop control over the weather. And that's a scary thought, but that's what we're trying to do. But can you, Job? Can you command the rain to come? Can you send out lightnings that they may go and say to you, here we are? This is a picture similar to that of Isaiah in the temple. Here am I. Here am I. Can you send out lightnings that they may go and say to you, submit to you, Job? Does the lightning submit to you? Submits to me, and you know this. You even said this. This is something also Job said. God does speak many things of what Job had mentioned. And these are things you can cross-reference. There are these cross-references in the Bible, and through your own studies, you can see where these things overlap, where he's actually answering specific things. Job had actually brought up the Pleiades and Orion and the bear. So God's bringing them up as well. Who has put wisdom in the mind, or who has given understanding to the heart? So, who has put wisdom in the mind, or who is now? This is another kind of two-picture situation. Who has given understanding internally, in the heart, where we can consider things within ourselves, or who has given understanding of the eye? This is a better maybe way of saying it. Who has given understanding in the heart to understand and just consider things rationally? Or who has given understanding with the eye, where you can see something and consider things from the outside of yourself? Who has done this? Who can number the clouds by wisdom, or who can pour out the bottles of heaven when the dust hardens in clumps and the clods cling together? This is what I was kind of getting at. So when the dust hardens in clumps and the clouds cling together, what he's picturing here is a vast array of different elements from the world, all joining in a rain cloud. And so the water skins are rain clouds, obviously. And then he kind of tilts them over to pour out at his given time. We do not control this. We don't control filling these clouds. It's a mystery, and it's a beautiful mystery. You know, my wife very much loves the sound of thunder. I love the sound of thunder too. Our youngest dog doesn't. He doesn't care for it at all. But she loves it. There's something awesome. There truly is something awesome about the thunder. And in the Bible, allegorically, it speaks of the thunder being the voice of God. You know, when God speaks, he shakes. He shakes. He really rattles a man or a woman to deep contemplation and meditation. So, we actually got to where we were supposed to. But as we continue, now we're going to get into his creation. Remember, most of the animals that he considers are not domesticated. They're absolutely wild. They're absolutely wild, and I look forward to considering this with you, because he moves from the inanimate nature, the stars in the heavens, and the glory of the heavens and so forth, not to be diminished or anything, but then we go into living creatures, things that God has given breath and movement, because in God we live and move and have our being. If we don't remember, that is from our great apostle Paul on Mars Hill. In him we live and move and have our being. Here, God is showing Job, in me you live, you move, you have your being. In me you had all of these blessings and all of these children. In me, you lost it all. In me, you will be restored. God is a God who reigns, and he has his express purpose for everything under the heavens. So remember, in Ecclesiastes, there's a difference between under heaven and under the sun. Under heaven is all of God's creation, all of God's dominion. Under the sun, essentially the dominion that God has lent us, is still under his dominion. But all of this is ruled and reigned by a sovereign God, and so is Job, and so are we. So if we haven't commanded the morning since our days began, if we haven't entered the springs of the sea, if we don't know the way of the dwelling of light, maybe we ought to trust he who does and can and rules and reigns, full of justice, as he will treasure up hailstones for his judgment. However, full of grace, full of mercy, he comes to his son, not with raining hail, hellfire, and damnation. He comes and shows him his own creation. So may we, as we consider his grand truth and who he is, the nature of God, remember that the nature of God he has put into the nature of creation, so that we can consider the heavens and all the works of his fingers and ask him the question, what is man? Who am I that you are mindful of me, my God? And when we are cast low, let us remember he is ever mindful, and he wants to walk with us and be with us in that furnace. And he is. And he is. So, as we cry out to him, let us listen for his voice and see the wonders of his creation around us to encourage us and lift us back to praising him. Praise God.